business is war. It's dog eat dog, rat eat rat.
Hi, I'm William Bryant, and today I'm going to do the About Me section. So it's easy enough to see from my background that my undergrad was mathematics, and that's theoretical mathematics and well beyond multivariate calculus, going into Linnell and Diffie-Q, doing ordinary differential equations, partial differential equations, matrix analysis, real analysis, numerical analysis, complex analysis, all of the things that are everything that you're actually going to see taken and applied in a finance setting. Because it's always really neat to look at subscription as a service when they start to talk about, churn and add-ons and all that, because that's all just set theory applied. That's all it is. And it's set theory mathematics. So I look at that and I'm just like, yeah, makes sense. Let's put this together. And it goes that way for a lot of other stuff. Regressions, when you're running regressions. If you were to do it by hand, it's matrix multiplication that gets you your coefficients so you can actually have a predicted formula. If you're doing linear programming because you've got operational constraints, be it planning for labor or material usage or what have you, well, that's all linear algebra and matrices. So all of these things have, my background in math and my background in statistics has made it very easy for me to utilize all of the things that are set up within finance for you to do your calculations. And when it comes to modeling and planning, the fact is that all models are equations. All of them. It doesn't matter. Your equations are set up and you have variance in the equations, but you look to minimize that variance, right? That's least squares regressions type of a scenario. And the idea of drivers, those are your independent variables that drive a dependent variable. And I know this is all math stuff and all formulas and what have you, and so you probably don't care, but the fact is that because of my background, all of this stuff has been much easier for me to do and understand and have that ability to actually explain where all of this comes from and explain what assumptions are based on, and to say, hey, well, this, and this is coming out. Well, yeah, it's because of this, this, and this. Would you like me to change this and this? Or I can't change this because this is hinged on this assumption. And mathematically, that's the way it is, or whatever. I'm able to explain it on that level. It's also the reason why I end up kind of being a rarity in the finance and accounting, because I have a solid background in IT as well. Well, when you're forced to do Java and JavaScripting and Mathematica, MATLAB, and SQL, throughout your math training, well, you already have an introduction to that. And so looking to connect into databases and doing queries and using Power Query Editor to create your models, that's all something that I was already introduced to for a long time. And I have set up my SQL Community Edition on my laptops just to practice and just fudge around, just to see if I can make stuff better. Part of the thing about math and having that logic introduced is also the fact that you get drilled into your head to do, optimization. You're always minimizing, you're maximizing, you're looking at the constraints, you're trying to optimize things. Well, you just start to do it over and over again. So even when you're looking at processes that you're doing, the first thing you think of is, how would this move better? How would this work better? Can we change things to make it better? And of course, there's always that, does it have to be changed to be better? What is that cost-benefit ratio? But this is just natural thinking in my head. And this is how I always approach things. And so it's made me very effective for a lot of the FP&A work that I've actually done within the finance world. Because on the one hand, I already know what all the drivers are that need to be done, because I can go into a granular level and say, hey, this formula has to spit this out. These are the variables I need to track to get to that, whatever you're spitting out. For example, like when you're running cash flows. And in order to just kind of like put a real fine edge on that ability, that's why I went and did all the accounting, because then I understand where and why these numbers show up in the financial statements. Because if you go into reporting and all the different reporting methodologies, understanding accrual accounting makes a huge difference in how you do your planning and how you actually do any of your forecasting. But all that said, the first 10 years, 13 years of my life, I was in what you'd call four-wall ops, where I was, shift lead, assistant store manager of operations type stuff, where it was everything from retail to big box distribution, and understanding kind of like supply chain inventory, and also doing the coffee shop and doing, well, I don't think there was ever a time I didn't work two jobs. And so at night I would do bartending, and which, some people look at as kind of, whoa, why are you doing that? But I do it because I always thought it was interesting to study people. I'm big on finance, behavioral finance, behavioral economics. And if you've read any of my stuff, you can see that I'm always looking at customer analytics, because I think there's a lot to be said about customer behavior and how they are. And you don't get that if you don't interact with people. And I did bartending, everything from biker bars to English pubs to fine dining, and got a whole variety of people that I got to interact with and see and observe in a setting where they're just kind of in a natural environment that, they're interacting with others, and got a real good grasp of just people on the whole for a whole spectrum. And again, part of my personality is to try to learn continually. But kind of going back to that four-wall piece, doing the four-wall was getting in there and running against a budget, doing the merchandising, doing the hiring and the training and the firing, being responsible for that cash management activity, being responsible to stick to that budget for the scheduling of the hours, and do the receiving of the inventory and the planning and the setups and all of the marketing scheme, and understand how all that goes together and see how people interact with it. And then also, spending time in other areas as well. I've done the manufacturing. I've been on the lines. I've done glass and I've done metal. And seeing how that works internally in a process system. Also done the painting and construction, internal and external. External painting, primarily internal construction. But, running those teams. In fact, there was hardly ever a time, because I was always trying to improve processes or change things or discuss things with, whether it be the owner or, whoever the manager was over the teams. And so I'd always get asked to be bumped up, And it's just in my nature to be that way and to look at things and try to make things better. But when you look at what you see in a lot of finance and accounting departments, when they look at numbers, they just see numbers. They just see costs. They don't see activity. When I say I see activity, I always get these glazed looks. And I see activity because I've done the ops in all different kinds of arenas. And so when I see something that says, inventory, I think back to when I had to do my inventory receiving and replenishment days. If I see a manufacturing system, I think of my laminating and metalworking days. I think of things that I've already done because I'm putting real activity to those numbers, which you don't get very often. And you combine that with the math and stats aspect to actually create a formula that represents that activity. That's my modeling, that's my finance, that's my planning. And I'm not one to rest on my laurels. I'm continually trying to achieve and get better. My main competitor is me. Can I always be better? Can I make things better? Because I don't really want to rest where it's at. And there's always that, the trade-off cost benefit. I mentioned that, but you look to compete and do better. Even to the point where hey, let's do more activities, because I took on metalworking, woodworking, leatherworking, and took on more classes. I started doing an activity many years ago of bookkeeping, which is how I kind of first got into accounting, when I started doing the bookkeeping on the project planning before I actually organized my own projects, I took coursework, continuing education at the university. So I took the, accounting principles and then the second accounting principles and really just kind of got into, what is what does accounting entail and, how do we go about doing this? And then even from an operational perspective, took on a project to rebuild an engine and install a new carburetor, redo the electrical wiring. Got to work directly with the metal shop. So when they were doing the grinding on the crankshaft for the new bearings, they were doing the grinding for the cylinders, had that intercollaboration when I was talking to them. And also got new parts designed when I was doing disc brakes on the rear. And so I've got these experiences within real activities and operations that most people from finance do not have. Not to mention the different, short-term contracts and gigs that I've gotten to do when I've gotten to actually lead mergers and acquisition operations, which was something that most people don't. They're in a huge group and they're somewhere in the back doing just the financial analytics part. They don't get to do the front line and have to do everything from the due diligence to the numbers to actually doing the integration and collaboration with all of the different departments. Or you're building a brand new model from scratch for a pricing strategy. And so you have to understand how different costs are associated with different services and packages to get pricing in a competitive bid scenario. And of course, got to do that as well. There are just a number of things that I've gotten to do with my background because I see things differently and I have the aptitude to do it. That you're just not going to see in the majority of the people. And I've been told that as well by several CFOs actually over the course of my tenure doing finance. And so not really to go much more into it aside that me as a person is one where you take that math and logic and that background and you take the drive that I just learned from training and being a student athlete and one that you're always competing to be better, and you put that into a scenario where you're assisting a company, and that's my whole goal is to be better, to do better, to optimize. And my goal and my background comes from, hey, if I haven't actually done this, I'm going to dig in and figure out how to do it. And do it better than the people who already do it. And that's just who I am. And so, it's a little bit about me. I don't know. Hopefully that says something. But thank you for listening.